could you do a roll call for us, please?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Here.
Director Decker?
Here.
Director Harvey?
Here.
Director Lohman?
No, I'm here too, I guess, yes.
Director Slater Carter?
Absolutely.
All right, thanks. We're all here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I think I just want to keep it short. On the president's statement, it's reported out today that the state water project is not likely to deliver water to most communities next year because of two years of drought as bad as we haven't seen in the state since the mid-'70s. Montara Water and Sanitary District is still doing well. We've got good handle on our supplies. The community's been doing a good job of conserving. But this is a reminder that we don't know how long this kind of thing lasts. So conservation now can do a lot to help us with how we fare down the line. So we want to encourage everyone to keep doing the good job of conserving. And you'll hear more from Clemens and the district in the days to come about ways that we're encouraging wise water use. Let's see. Next up, do we have any oral comments for items that are not on the agenda? I'm looking for hands. I see no hands.
Yes.
I see, okay, I see two hands. I see Catherine and I see Carlisle. And anyone else? Okay, let's go first to Catherine and then to Carlisle.
Thank you. I was noticing on Nextdoor that there were some comments about the requests statewide, actually, to conserve. And then the question was raised, why are we still allowing all this massive building to go on? I added the word massive, of course. But I wanted to point out that it's not the water districts can't call a statewide drought or even a local drought. It needs to be called by an outside agency. And we can't put moratoriums on our construction either. Even the last moratorium was initiated by the state, by the Water Quality Control Board. So I would suggest people get in touch with the MCC, with the Board of Supervisors, and with our state reps and ask that question, and not one or two people, but as many people as you can get to ask that question. I certainly have exactly the same question and did in the 70s when our population was about half what it is today. And we are seriously good at reducing our water use, which means growth is the only major way to reduce water use. So that said, I would suggest people do that and pay attention. Greg has told me that there may be a petition going around to undo Prop SB 9 and 10, which allows pretty well unrestricted building in most communities. Thank you to those people, but everybody needs to have a voice in this and a hand. Thank you.
All right, Carlisle, and then after Carlisle, we'll go to Greg.
Catherine, I was just going to say the reason there's unbridled building is not just single family homes going up, but the state has mandated that they build more housing. So of course, that's why you have the extra 71 units possibly going in up there in Montara, Moss Beach. And they're going to take some of the water that we're saving. So that's just the way it is. And like I said, yeah, that they all want to, add more ADUs and put multifamily units on a single family lot, and they're working their way through the legislation doing that. But what I wanted to say was just, I really hope MWSD will, going forward into 2022, really look hard at trying to develop their parks powers because, Granada has theirs, and they can stand out and ask money from the county. We're not getting any money from the county because we don't have any parks up here to ask for. And it would be really nice if we got our community together and had a senior center, a community center, a place to hold meetings, emergency evacuation building, a place where kids could do after school activities. So that's what I'm on about today. Thanks.
Thank you, Carlisle. Let's go to Greg, and then after Greg to Rick.
Well,
So Felicia Marcus, who was the head of the State Water Resources Board a few years back, was on a webinar with Becker a month or two ago, and she said we cannot conserve our way out of this drought. So that leads to the statewide initiative petition. At least the reason I'm going to support this, it's called Our Neighborhood Voices. I will be collecting signatures for it. What it will do is allow, if the petition will allow a measure to be put on the ballot, and people will then vote. If approved, that ballot measure would allow cities, towns, and counties to set zoning standards which override the state. Because SB 9 and 10 did nothing for affordable housing and increased density markedly, and has gotten a lot of people upset. I, of course, support it because of water supply. I also don't particularly want to live in a dense neighborhood either. And then there are a lot of people who support it and some of the backers because it makes no provision for affordability. So that's going on. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Rick?
I think, the interesting thing about this mandate on build more houses, build more houses, build more houses is, in case anybody was paying attention to the latest census, California lost population. Cities are losing population. People are moving out of Sacramento and going somewhere else. And people are moving to Texas, where population increased and they get more representation. So why are we building more houses if our population is shrinking? And as Greg said, SB 9 and 10 have nothing to do about affordable housing, farm worker housing. It's just more houses. And what's the point of that if our population is dropping? That just doesn't make sense. I don't want to get in a big debate tonight about this because we have a big agenda. But that's my comment, is with the shrinking population, the state is saying build more houses. Are we going to have open houses just lying around somewhere? I don't know. So I'm done.
Okay, thanks. Let's, we're going to move into the public hearing section. We don't always have one of these, but tonight we have 4 items. We'll have 4 separate public hearings, 1 each. We'll start with item number 1, review and possible action concerning establishment of Prop 218 limits for solid waste disposal fee increase. Clemens, why don't you introduce it and then I'll open the hearing.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So we're going through this at least in a similar fashion every year. Around this time, we have a franchise agreement with the Ecology of the Coast. So every year we look at some rate increases that are going to be effective in early January. This year, it's actually a cost-based rate increase. But there is something on top of that we have to do this year, and that is we're introducing essentially the compost service, meaning a weekly green waste pickup, where now also food scraps can be disposed in the green can. And we're going to hear quite a bit about this tonight. There's a number of items in this regard, and the following public hearing, one of the following public hearings has to do with it as well. So all in all, we are going to ask for a 9.19% rate increase over the current calendar year's rate in 2022. And it's about half of that is a cost-based increase and half of that is roughly the additional service that Ecology is going to provide for us next year. We sent notices out. We reviewed the calculations, went through the exercise with our accountant, had appropriate agenda items here that we brought to the board, reviewing all of this. Then sent notices out in October 21 to all 1736 property owners and customers in Montara and Moss Beach. We notified them about the planned rate increase. So far as I know, at least at the preparation of this agenda item, we didn't receive written protest, but we will have to make a final count at the end of the hearing. And Scott, if you can let us know before you close the public hearing, I want to thank Tracy. She's actually in the office today, but we wanted to give everybody an opportunity to drop off protest notices up to the end of the public hearing. So we're going to go through a little motion before that public hearing is closed. So the whole purpose of this meeting is really to formally count the number of written protests received. And if written protests are submitted against the proposed fees or against a particular fee by the owners of a majority of the parcels, the fee will not become effective. So the recommendation is to open the public hearing, allow relevant testimony, close the public hearing, count all allowable Prop 218 protests received, determine whether or not the proposed rate limits should be approved in accordance with Prop 218, and adopt the ordinance of the Montara Water and Sanitary District establishing maximum rates for the collection, removal, and disposal of refuse and for recycling services effective in January 2022. Thanks.
Okay.
Scott, we've had Lisa over there with, I don't know if you see her over there.
Yep. We'll open the hearing. Let's open the public hearing.
Okay.
And then we'll go to the audience for comments and testimony. And then after that, we'll close and count and so forth. Let's start with Lisa.
Still muted. Oh.
Okay, I don't know if I'm speaking at the right time, so please be forgiving. It's all related to me, and so I'll just speak now. And if it's not for now, just remember it later when it comes up. Okay, so Pillar Ridge has 227 single-family, homeowner-occupied, manufactured homes on rented lots and covers 22 acres. Household waste has always been picked up weekly from in front of our homes. We pay the same rates as other single-family homes in the district, and Pillar Ridge Management takes care of all the sub-billing and collections. We received no Prop 218 notice or MWSD newsletter. We were never issued green waste carts. We still have to provide our own cans in order to receive the biweekly green waste service. The resident manager was told by Recology that Pillar Ridge service is not going to change. However, the Pillar Ridge Management December newsletter has this notice. Attention, starting January 1, 2022, throwing food waste in the trash will be illegal in California and violators could be fined. Food waste will now go in the green bins along with landscaping waste and be known as compost. Unquote. I'm not objecting to the rate increase and its purpose, but that the 227 families at Pillar Ridge will not receive the environmental service they'll be paying for. So that's it for me. Thanks.
If I could just briefly address this, we did send the notice to Pillar Ridge Management and asked for it to be distributed. So I have to follow up where this got stuck. But I think that's a valid point. Thank you.
May I just also say to Lisa that we spoke to management at Pillar Ridge and said that you would have absolutely the same service as everyone else. You'd be having pickup weekly and that compost would go in the can, and we did send information also.
Let's I want to explore whether or not this affects our action tonight. And Christine, I want to give you a minute to think about that. Let's hear from Carlisle, and then I'd like to come back to Christine and pose a question.
Okay, well, this is partially for, and I guess partially for Chris Porter. Of the 1,736, I think you call them users or property owners, or maybe parcels that are billed by MWSD, and of course, indirectly through our garbage pickup as well. The majority is 50%, is that correct? So that would be 869 divided by half is about 227. No, sorry. That's something that has to do with pillage. But what's the threshold of objection here?
50% plus 1.
So, okay, 869 divided by 2 plus 1. Okay, and now on the 227 homes in Pillar Ridge, are they part of that 1,736? Or are you counting them as one parcel?
That I don't know.
I don't mean Chris, I meant Clemens.
Mhm.
Are they one billing unit, or are they going to be considered 227 owners or home properties?
I can't answer that offhand. Chris, this is one billing unit from Pillar Ridge
One
for you guys,
billing
right?
unit. It's
Yes.
one bill.
And
Do they get
and,
one vote?
And I'm not quite sure how the property status plays a role in this with the property, how the property ownership affects now the vote for Pillar Ridge. I can't speak to that right now.
Okay, so the last part of my comment was, and this is just on behalf of Lisa and the other people who live in Pillar Ridge, if you're charging them the same as you're charging the rates to everyone else, why do they have to supply their own garbage cans? If you're going to give them a new green waste can, apparently, but they still have to provide, I think I heard her say that Pillar Ridge has to supply their own garbage cans per household. That kind of seems a little weird to me. And I also remember her telling me one sec, that they're not allowed to bring anything to the recycle days either. So I don't think that's very equitable, especially considering it's kind of a lower, income area, not pejoratively, but just in general. Thank you.
Let's, Chris, do you want to address those points?
Yes, they all received garbage cans. They all received recycling cans. The green waste cans, there's limited green waste at the at the park. And that was by the park management that they would provide their own carts. So they have that, not everyone puts out green waste at the park. And so they have always provided their own green cans. As far as the drop-off days, there is no restriction on the people in Pillar Ridge to not be able to bring things to the drop-off days. I never heard that before.
I could be wrong. Lisa could maybe weigh in. Thank you.
Lisa, did you want to say anything, or we can go on to Catherine if you don't?
Oh, right. Yeah, I think we can make use of the drop off. That I didn't bring that up. I also do want to emphasize I'm not objecting to the rate increase. It's just that, and even having to use our own green waste cans up until now was fine. As Chris said, not that many people use it, but the people that do really depend on it. And but since we're going to this weekly and putting the food waste in there, I don't understand how, the open cans won't work for that and the biweekly pickup won't. So I don't understand how we can participate in this program, which seems very worthwhile. That was all. Thank you.
Let's go to Catherine.
Thank you. I see Pillar Ridge in some ways as like a unit of like a bunch of small duplexes. They don't have a whole lot of yard. They aren't, and they don't have a whole lot of space. And some of these containers that we're using, particularly the green waste ones, are huge. And they're difficult for some people to even maneuver. And so, but I'm wondering if Pillar Ridge isn't treated as a single unit because there's one property owner, or if it's treated differently because there are tenants. And I'm not asking to solve the problem tonight. I think it's just an interesting mix of situations. Lisa, thank you for not objecting to this price increase. And if we want to form a committee to work towards making sure that this is more equitable, I would be happy to sit on that committee. I'm just wondering if maybe we couldn't do big green waste cans on every block where people can bring their household waste. No, I see that. Okay. Or someplace where the trash area is for Pillar Ridge. No, there's got to be a solution. It may not be perfect, and let's work to it.
Yeah, it's 22 acres. You can't ask people to go traipsing all over the place.
I mean, would you want to have a dumpster on every block in Moss Beach? I mean, our community's not set up for that.
No, it's not.
These are homes, and I thank you for the offer of a committee. I think we could hash this out, and please include me.
Well, I'm sorry, Lisa, you were the first member of the committee.
Well, yeah, I mean, the management companies in Southern California, they got a lot on their mind, a lot of parks. And it's just like, and anybody here is not allowed to call ecology. It all has to go through the resident manager. It does make it awkward. So if we could just sit this down and maybe smaller green cans for our homes or something. But yeah, it's something about this move to keep the organic waste out of the landfill. We want to participate in that, and in a way that's not, we can't do the dumpster. There's no place for it. The community wasn't set up for that.
No, it was built in the 60s, right?
65, yes.
So let's go to Rick. Let me just summarize something, though. It sounds to me like it's very likely we're going to set up an ad hoc committee to talk about how we might be able to do something. I'm watching Chris Porter, who's very attentively nodding. Looks like we have several people interested in finding a way to make this more workable. Rick, let's go to your feedback.
No, I just wanted one quick comment, is that this is once again an unfunded state mandate. The people in Sacramento said this is a great idea, regardless of the fact that probably 90% of the people in Montara, Moss Beach totally recycle and compost everything they've got. We're stuck with this. We just need to form this committee and work out among our communities the best way to implement this, because state said, go do this. And there's some big benefits to some of this, and then there's some awkward situations, and we just need to get this committee going, and let's get rid of the awkward situations and resolve those, because it's a law. So will the community, once again, will figure out a good solution for everybody, I hope. Thanks.
Okay. I see no more hands up unless, Carlisle, you raised your hand again. And I see Catherine too.
No, I didn't, but I forgot to say one thing, and that is that Chris Porter once told me that all the food waste and green waste is driven all the way down to Gilroy. So it's not that green to be transporting that kind of trash all the way to Gilroy weekly. So I object on that basis, but I realize we can't get around it because of the state mandate. But anyway.
And I'll just finish with, it shows the advantages of small local government compared to broad brush, massive government who doesn't know what's going on in the neighborhoods. And I'm ever so thankful that we have a community here that stands together. So we'll work it. We will make it work.
Okay, if we have no more public testimony, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
And before we take the vote, I'll ask Clemens.
Yeah, if I could ask Tracy to just double check if we received any notices outside before we close the hearing or during we close the hearing, that would be great.
Okay.
Tracy, thank you.
Okay, well, let's get a second and then we'll wait because we can't take the vote until Tracy's back anyway.
Second.
Thank you.
It's a great week and a great month for planets. There's a comet. People, if you'll go online, there's the brightest comet of the year that will never come back. It's a one-time thing. And there's lots of great planetary alignments and stuff to see at sunset and early in the morning. I'm a filler.
And king tides are coming again too.
Ooh. So don't go to the beach and watch the stars because you'll get wet.
Or maybe even swept out.
I know I went once to Mill Valley and to see friends, and they called ahead and warned me that their whole causeway was flooded because of a king tide. So at least we don't live there.
So Clemens, are we?
I would like to volunteer for that ad hoc committee with Catherine and Lisa and Chris.
Let's take that up after we've closed the public hearing.
I thought we already did.
No, we're
Okay.
we're waiting on Clemens and Tracy to give us the all clear.
Tracy, do you have a final count of the protests for us?
So there are, the district received 0 written protests and there is no majority vote. I checked outside in the box and there's none, there are no people outside.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Harvey?
Aye.
Director Lohman?
Yes.
Director Slater Carter?
Yes.
Okay, now to the board discussion. I have a question for Christine. Given what we've heard tonight about Pillar Ridge and understanding how the protests are to be addressed, do you see, let me just preface it by saying my preference would definitely be that every tenant of every multi-unit dwelling arrangement would know about this kind of thing. That would be my preference, but to the particulars of what's called for in the law, does what we learned tonight do anything to cause you concern about proceeding with the proposed action?
Thank you, President Boyd. I guess I have a question. The Prop 218 requirement is that notices are mailed to the record owner of a parcel of property, not necessarily the customers if they don't own. So I don't know the configuration there at the mobile home park and who actually owns the parcels, but an individual parcel owner must receive notice of a Prop 218 proposed rate increase to be effective.
My understanding, and Lisa or Clemens or anyone who knows better, my understanding is it's a single parcel owned by the the management company, and that the tenants are all renters on that property. Is Lisa?
Yeah, there's 3 parcels for the park, but each manufactured home, with the exception of maybe a dozen old ones, have a parcel number for their manufactured home. And that's all, it's all on record. We were on direct billing for a number of years. And the problem was that those parcel numbers aren't something you can attach the unpaid bill to or something like that. So that didn't work out. But we do have our own parcels for our homes, but it's awkward. And I understand why you wouldn't send the newsletter to the residents here, because it wouldn't make any sense if we weren't going to provide the service. But as it is, now we're on the brink of this, and nobody's aware of this new state requirement or what goes and what can.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So
So if I could just quickly clarify the language specifically, that the notice has to go to the record owner, and that's defined as the owner of a parcel whose name and address appears on the last equalized secured property tax assessment roll. So if the parcels that you just mentioned, Lisa, the parcel numbers, if those are actual tax parcel numbers, then those parcels would be required to receive a notice.
Yes, we get a tax bill on that parcel number and every year, and there's a payment to MWSD and other stuff.
So there's some individual parcel numbers that mobile homes are located on that are individually assessed by the tax collector, which
the tax collector assesses us for our homes. And
okay. But the record owner of the property is that
we rent the land under the home.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be like a condo, maybe?
No, condo would be if it was owner, if the residents owned the park.
I can confirm what Lisa is essentially saying, that the actual parcels are owned by the park management, but the individual homes have specific APNs that the county assesses assigns not to properties, but to those specific homes.
Can
I? Rick.
Yeah, just real quick. I think, we are obviously meeting the legal requirements, which isn't necessarily sufficient for our style of community. I would think this committee we're forming can take tons of literature out to the rec center and distribute information. And I like the fact that we have a committee with local people in the committee to just resolve these problems. These are not, doesn't sound like insurmountable. They're serious, but I think this committee with the local people, Chris and some board members, can just work out these details to everybody's satisfaction, get the information to people, say, here's what we're doing because of the state law. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's what, the kind of containers we're going to have. We have all that literature already printed. And, help educate the people and just resolve any crises out there. I think that's the best way to do this.
So,
I think that gets everybody together who's involved and just work out the problems, and then we can approve it if we have to later. But I think you got sufficient people there to just deal with the problem.
So I want to thank Allison for checking actually the mailing list right now. So the mobile home park was on the mailing list. And so we did, Lisa, we sent a notice to Robert Ketchum. I'm assuming that is your address. So I can confirm.
He's no relation to me.
Okay.
Can I?
So Clemens, are you saying that we think that we sent it out to everyone in Pillar Ridge? And,
Yes.
and I just want to make a point about how we address it, because Lisa made the point. These are homes, and there's no reason for us to attach a word to the front of it. No, let's just talk about the homes at Pillar Ridge. That's my urging. They may be manufactured homes, but how the home got constructed is beside the point. This is where families live, and I call my home a home, and Lisa calls her home a home. So I think it's be beneficial for us to talk to it that way.
Can I say one thing, Scott?
Please, Chris.
Number one, I can send all the information by email tomorrow to the Pillar Ridge office, and they can, I'm sure most of the residents have emailed, they can send it out to everybody. So everyone will have all the information tomorrow. But speaking to the technicality of notification, I can just say from past experience that when we had delinquent people in the mobile home park, that was one of the reasons that they went to the one billing again, because the one billing is the owner of the property. And that's why, so we notified the person who was the owner of the property. And I understand the ramifications of what Lisa is talking about. And I, of course, will get all the information out tomorrow. And, you know, we can, I have never had a call from anyone previously talking about green waste cans. So in the parks, that they didn't like the way things were. So this is kind of an eye-opening discussion for me also. But again, I will get the information out tomorrow.
So let's set up the committee. Catherine, let's see, Jim, you suggested you wanted to be on it. Do we need to thumb wrestle with anyone else? Or shall we just do Catherine and Jim?
Let's do two. It's an ad hoc now, I think.
Right. So Catherine and Jim, if that's okay with you. Lisa, I had the same thought Catherine did. How could you do this without you? And then Chris, we invite your participation on that. It sounds like you're already planning on it anyway. And then Lisa, I would like to see if you think others there in the community might also want to participate in this. I think that would be good for the committee to discuss and maybe bring some additional people in to get a little more participation. That should also help get some of the word out.
Right.
But,
I can ask one of the other board members, and I don't know, we don't know a whole lot of people, but yeah.
Okay, that's great. And I want to ask that we consider the communication, the cans. There was one other thing I was thinking about. I'll try to think of it in a minute, but if I can't think of it now, I'll communicate to you through Clemens. I'm sure you'll have a lot to discuss, and I'm betting it's going to take more than one meeting to tackle. I think a few things are going to shake out here. I'm guessing.
Since we never did receive the green carts, do you think it's possible that smaller size could be issued for this community? I mean, I understand this is an investment that was unanticipated, but going forward, I mean.
The answer is yes, but right now, it's going to take a while to get them because of COVID. The manufacturing stopped and I'm back ordered now about 4 or 5 months on orders I've put in. So the answer is yes. We'll discuss that and see what size and then go forward from there.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask one more question real quick?
Sure.
I just think that on a basis of equity, I know what the 218 rule is one vote per property parcel. But, there are 227 homeowners in this park. So they're not getting a vote on a price raise or price increase. I'd be mad if they skip my house, but they have issues too. I mean, they're paying for the service. But they don't get to vote whether or not they approve an increase. So maybe that's something this ad hoc committee can look at. And it would be the board's decision whether or not to let them vote on these increases every time they come down the pike, instead of leaving it for the absentee landlord where are they, Lisa, down in San Diego or something? They're not going to come in and send in a protest letter, I don't think. Right. So anyway, that's just my thought.
Okay, thanks. Catherine.
Quick comment. First, Sid, we got to follow the state rule by the letter, not by what we want. Sorry. But that's the way it is. And second, since Jim and I are on the trash committee, I'm going to ask Clemens and Chris to keep us informed on anything you send out on trash and what's going on. I'd appreciate that. That way it just makes it easy. It makes the meetings shorter because we already don't have to ask so many questions. And Lisa, do you want to be on that list as well of people who are informed? Of course you are. You're on the committee.
Yeah, and as far as what Chris said about sending an email to the manager, manager doesn't have people's email addresses necessarily. The only way they can distribute information is to print it out and put it in the message tubes. It would need to be bilingual.
Carlisle reminded me of the one thing I was interested in asking the committee to take a look at, and that is if our newsletter, if it turns out that our newsletter is not going to the individual homes, can you please consider, well, first, just double check on how that's working. And second, if we see some kind of gap there, maybe make a recommendation about how we could close that gap. And I can certainly appreciate that residents of a home in a community like this with a property management, the consequences that we talk about in the newsletter about individual rates and whatnot may not directly apply to people who have rented a parcel to put a home on. Maybe we need to think about that perspective in some of the way that we put the newsletter together, so that it we take it into account and address it from that point of view.
It is a special situation since this information goes out with the billing statements, which we don't receive here. And I imagine most people here appreciate most of the utilities, not the electric, but most of the utilities are on the rent statement all together, all handled at once. It's very convenient. And so they don't think about the trash as being a separate item. And so the newsletter could be confusing, but very helpful to me.
Well, let's, if you would, I think the committee could put its collective minds together to see what, if anything, we might want to do differently with the newsletter to take a community of this many homes into account. Okay.
Good.
One quick question, Lisa, is there a way we can work together to get emails for every household there? I think.
Can I ask the committee to take this up? Can we defer this to the committee?
Yeah,
I see a hand from. I'm sorry, Jim. What?
The committee can handle this. This is committee's job.
I see a hand from Michelle Dragany.
Just a quick note. Maybe you can translate it into Spanish.
Yes, that's what I heard Lisa say as well.
Yeah.
So
just one note about the newsletter and MWSD board communicating with residents here somehow to get across that you are our elected representatives. We vote for you. And so that they understand that. That's important. And I hope you can appreciate that, the importance of that. So, I mean, if we don't get the newsletter, we don't have a sense of who you are.
So I just want to mention that we do have an agreement with the management that the newsletter is distributed. So we'll work with the committee to see where the communication breakdown was. But I can assure you that, we've been trying to reach the Pillar Ridge folks in Pillar Ridge.
Yeah. And Lisa, I'll just take a quick moment to mention, we are working on the academy, the series of meetings to help people understand how this process works of, joining the board and getting elected and the work of the board and the nature of the work that we do. And we've said it several times, but I just want to say it out loud during this meeting. One of our key groups of interest to try to reach are the residents of Pillar Ridge, because I have a sense, and I think part of what you're saying is it's very easy for a community that's all in one place like that, off at the boundary of the community, to be somewhat isolated and marginalized. And we need to take steps to make sure that we don't let that happen, and that we need to turn that around and get more engagement. So as we tee up our next one, definitely want to get some word out and try to increase participation, because we really love having your participation here with us, and more members from Pillar Ridge participating would be better yet. We have in front of us a recommendation to enact the ordinance. And so let's see, determine whether or not the proposed rate limit should be approved in accordance with Prop 218. If so, adopt the ordinance proposed in the agenda item. Do we have a motion for that?
Move to approve.
I second the motion.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance next in order. Tracy, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Harvey?
Aye.
Director Lohman?
Yes.
Director Slater Carter?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 5-0. The ordinance is enacted. Let's move to the next public hearing item. A reminder, we have a total of 4 of these, plus more on the agenda later, plus a closed session afterwards. So I'm going to try to move us along a little bit, but I'm really glad we got to discuss that in a little more depth. This item is review and possible action concerning adoption of a revised master fee schedule to amend the solid waste disposal fees.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. It's exactly that. Now that we have a new Prop 218 limit, we would like to revise the master fee schedule and ask the board to open a public hearing, consider relevant public testimony, close the public hearing, and then adopt the ordinance of the Montara Water and Sanitary District restating and amending the master fee schedule. I want to be specific that the only changes that are in here right now are the newly approved Prop 218 limit for solid waste charges. Thanks.
Okay, well, let's open the public hearing.
Do we need a motion for that, or do we just open it?
No, President can do that.
Great.
I'm just getting my paperwork in front of me. And do we have any public testimony? If we do not have any public testimony, we do have to consider protests on this item, or is this not one of those?
This is not one of those.
Okay, thank you. Since we have no more public testimony, can I have a motion, please, to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we close the public hearing. Tracy, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Harvey?
Aye.
Director Lohman?
Yes.
Director Slater Carter?
Of course, yes.
Okay, by a vote of 5-0, the hearing is closed. Any board discussion?
I think we had a great discussion earlier, which kind of covered all the ramifications of this. So I think that was fine.
Yeah, for people who might be watching for the first time, we had a lot of board discussion before we ever sent out the Prop 218 notice. So several meetings ago, we hashed through all this. All the details are in the board packet. So are we prepared to take the next action?
So moved. For resolution next in order. For the item on the agenda.
This is to adopt the ordinance of the Montara Water and Sanitary District restating and amending the master fee schedule. So I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Catherine?
I did.
I second.
Second. Okay, thank you. All right, Tracy, if we could have a roll call vote.
Okay. Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Harvey,
Aye.
Director Loman,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries and the ordinance is enacted. Let's now, thank you for how timely that one was. Item 3 on the public hearing schedule, review and possible action concerning mandatory organic waste recycling ordinance.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So I think this is one of the main topics tonight. So the Senate Bill 1383 that was signed in 2016 requires us to adopt a mandatory organic waste recycling ordinance. The goal here is to reduce organic disposal waste by 75%, increase the edible food recovery by 20%, and some other smaller goals, but not less important. So all special districts that provide solid waste collection services are required to adopt now ordinances that implement the requirements of this SB 1383. And so briefly what this does is, well, we have to essentially provide source separated waste collection services or recover organic waste and recyclables from mixed waste. We just went.
We lost you, Clemens.
You're frozen.
I might be able to pick up where
It's not that cold.
where he was reading. I wasn't reading long to be able to fill in. Clemens, if you're with us, move your lips.
Where is he? I don't see him.
I see him, but he's frozen.
I can continue with the staff report if
There we go.
Okay, please.
Thanks, sure. So yes, the SB 1383 regulations that were developed by Cal Recycle, who's the administrative authority that oversees the program, requires that the district provide source separated waste collection services, which we do through Recology, that we establish an edible food recovery program, which we are proposing to do through the county. And that's another item coming up on the new business agenda. Adopt a procurement policy regarding recycled paper content. And that's another item coming up on new business. We have to adopt reporting and record keeping policy to provide information on an annual basis to Cal Recycle. We have to prepare and translate notices to educate waste generators about organic waste separation requirements. And the ordinance goes into detail on those requirements. And in an upcoming new business item, again, we are proposing to amend our agreement with Recology, and Recology will be providing education service, educating all of the ratepayers on source separating, what to do with the organic waste, everything we've been talking about. Recology is taking on that task. We are also required to create waivers for certain organic waste generators. And finally, we have to establish enforcement mechanisms to investigate complaints, perform inspections, and even cite waste generators and waste haulers that violate any of the regulations. This is a mandatory requirement, the adoption of the ordinance. And in the staff report, the main provisions of the ordinance are summarized. There are requirements for single-family waste generators, requirements for commercial businesses, edible food recovery requirements, requirements for haulers and facility operators, which include recology, procurement requirements, and inspection investigation requirements. The last thing is, sorry, we're required to adopt our ordinance by January 1st, 2022. And then by April, we must submit our initial compliance report that must include a copy of our ordinance and some other information regarding our organic waste efforts. And thereafter, we are required to provide annual reports to CalRecycle about the operation of our program. It's our education efforts, issuance of waivers, our contamination monitoring efforts, our oversight efforts with regard to waste haulers and edible food recovery. CalRecycle has, I'll just end with this, it has the authority to enforce compliance against all jurisdictions, including special districts and us, and can impose fines of up to $10,000 per day for any failure on the part of a jurisdiction to comply with the regulations and or enforce its own ordinance against waste generators. So I don't know, are you back, Clemens? Maybe.
Yes, thanks for taking the item, yeah.
No problem.
It's a team effort.
So I think we leave up with the recommendation to essentially also open to public hearing, consider relevant testimony, close the public hearing, and adopt the ordinance.
All right. Thank you, Clemens. Let's open the public hearing. The public hearing is now open. Do we have any testimony from members of the public? I'm not seeing any hands. I see Rick, you're a member of the board. You'll get your shot, but you can do it now if you want. If we have no public testimony, I entertain a motion for closing the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
So Rick and Catherine with the motion and the second to close the public hearing. Tracy, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Harvey?
Aye.
Director Lohman?
Yes.
Director Slater-Carter?
Yes.
Okay. By a vote of 5-0, the public hearing is closed. Now let's go to board discussion. Rick, you had your hand up first.
Yeah. Do we have any format for raccoon insurance involved in all of this if we're putting waste out? And so if they trash our cans and spread stuff over, do we get state insurance coverage for all of this?
Good question.
I actually have a question that it's a little bit tangential, but putting food waste into the cans does bring it up. Chris, I've seen so many variations, and I'm sure you have too, of how people try to raccoon-proof their cans. Apparently, based on some observation recently, some techniques meet with greater amounts of displeasure from your staff than others. It's subtle, but we want to stay on their good side. I would love to have a way that we could lock cans or secure the cans where we weren't also making life rough on your team. And the cans just don't really lend themselves to that without doing some kind of, bungee cording or bricks. Yeah. And I bet you've got some ideas on how we could go up to the next level of doing this, where us against the raccoons, but not against recology. So
Pacifica has been doing the food for 10 years. And I honestly have to say that I think you think the problem is going to be worse than it is.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's going to be worse.
No,
I already...
there's going to be a lot of critter interference in the garbage collection. The best the best thing to use is the bungee cord.
Perfect.
That, you know, and anybody that really needs a bungee cord, we're happy to supply you with one. If you need one, they just need to call the office.
I may need a different one because I've had mine completely removed twice, and it kind of has that sense of you're doing it wrong.
Is this on what cart? On the green cart or on
No,
all
on the gray cart?
On the gray. Okay, I'll have to see.
Well, I'm just looking for the best. I'm looking for a way to do it where it accommodates the worker.
The best by far.
Okay. Maybe I got it on there too tight or something, but all right. Well, all right. Do we need any further discussion on this? I do want to mention part of this has to do with agencies like ours are now going to be required when we buy paper to buy paper with recycled content. It may have something to do with how much paper is going to be generated just for things like board packets to list out all of the obligations of this new legislation. It's nice of them to be so thoughtful in having us be greener in carrying out this unfunded mandate. I appreciate what they're trying to do, but wow, is this heavyweight. This is a lot to read. If a member of the audience hasn't looked at what is required of this and every other special district that does trash collection, I invite you to just download the PDF and flip through the pages as quickly as you can and see how long it takes to get through this item. It's a lot.
We had one really good positive news, Clemens and I, the other day, was part of SB 1383 is procurement of compostable material. So there was 159 tons listed for San Mateo County. So I wrote to San Mateo County right away and I said, because there's a huge cost involved in this, in procuring this material. So I said, how is San Mateo County unincorporated? How are you dividing up the tonnage? And I was told that we're exempt, that San Mateo County is responsible for that. So that was a big cost savings. Clemens was thrilled. I was his best friend that day.
All right. Catherine?
Yeah, Scott, you hit on my comment about the lack of consideration for, I don't know how we're going to reduce our green waste by 75% when most people compost all their kitchen stuff anyway. We'll be lucky if we're going to reduce our green waste anything, or our waste going into the trash. That aside, my other concern is, Clemens, are we going to need software or some kind of special program, or is there some format already available for keeping track of all this record keeping? We're going to have to keep track of paper, when we bought it, how much it cost, keep our receipts, or at least photocopies of our receipts, and it goes on from there. The same for our hopefully we're not going to be punished if our green waste doesn't go down. Although if we just calculate it by per week, then we're going down by half anyway, because we were at every other week. So, but I'm concerned about this record keeping, because it is always punitive if you don't do the record keeping. So I think we need to start out with a good program so that it isn't a huge burden on our staff.
One thing
I can only agree with that. I do want to mention that, you know, a portion of the reporting is actually, if the board agrees with that, tonight we have an agenda item up where we're suggesting to enter an MOU with the San Mateo County Office of Sustainability. So they will take a portion of that reporting for us. And I think that is really the major headache. But there is still a lot of these reports remaining. And I agree, it's going to be a headache. We have to work closely together with Recology and with CalRecycle. CalRecycle is providing a lot of the forms, for example, for us. But it is going to increase our workload, absolutely.
And maybe CSDA will have something, since every single special district is going to get hit with this. It would seem perhaps they would be useful to talk to. Anyway, thank you.
Part of the record keeping is to review the contents of the cards to make sure that the correct materials are in the cards. Well, we're already doing that. And anybody that got one of those bright orange tags on their cans saying incorrect information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing this on a monthly basis, is send Clemens a list on a monthly basis by address, by container type, and by, incorrect inclusion and whatever can, because as I always want to do, I want us to be ahead. So we're going to be ahead of everything. We're going to be doing this on a monthly basis. And then once a year, it says once a year, you have to review so many cans in the district. So we're going to be reviewing every can as we do the recycling and the green waste. Every time we're doing pickup, we review what's in those carts before we pick them up. But then once a year, we'll have to review so many gray cans, so many garbage cans to make sure that there isn't material in those cans that should be recycled. And, I'm kind of feeling like the garbage police, but that's part of the program.
Well, and we are really put in an enforcement role. So the district is required to enforce. Mm-hmm. And if we don't enforce, there are fines that come to us. We're in trouble. So that's going to be interesting to see how that is going to place out. There is a transition phase for some years before this really kicks in. But we'll have to think through how we would attack something like that, because we're
going to be ahead of everybody. Believe me, I know.
Catherine, you go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to make sure that, as with so many things in today's society, that that we have video or photos when somebody gets an orange tag, so that we can back up, if necessary, what's going on. One of those little, I've forgotten, they were started in Half Moon Bay. The camera on a helmet.
We mark on the tag what's in
GoPro.
So it's right on the tag.
I think this opens a bigger topic. Clemens mentioned there's a good bit of being active regulators on this, and that we're going to have to take on some new roles. I want to suggest that we start putting together guidance for staff. The ordinance allows us to do many things, but I think we need to have very clear guidance for what our various staff members are permitted to do and required to do. Like, for example, one of the things I was reading as I was going through it was, we're permitted to enter the premises of a business. It's a very carefully written section. I don't want to make too much of it here, but I think it'd be really good if we had clear written policy about. I don't want a member of our staff reading that and then deciding how that looks. I think that as an agency, we need to have a policy manual on, here's what that means in this agency. Here's when we would do it. Here's who would do it. Here's the steps we would go through. Because this is not some kind of, no-knock warrant kind of 4:30 in the morning kind of thing. This is, look, we need to put it in perspective and make sure that we're not making stuff up on the go. And to Catherine's point, I think that could definitely be under that kind of umbrella of let's be mindful of what we want any one of us to know before we take any action on that front. Carlisle.
I guess I sort of was not paying 100% attention. Are you saying the MWSD has to now to be garbage enforcers or the garbage popo for the coast, mid-coast?
Garbage popo.
Just for Montara and Moss Beach.
Well, that's what I mean. Never mind. I mean, I try to be a good citizen, but if I end up with an icky old spaghetti jar with crusty stuff I forgot to rinse, I usually throw it in the garbage. I don't soak it 3 days till I can get it clean enough to put it in the blue. Is that what we're talking about here? Or what? More about paper recycling.
Christine, Chris, your people are going to be doing the examining of the contents. Do you have any?
What they wouldn't be looking for one thing. What my guys tag on especially is garbage in the green waste can. That's one thing that gets tagged a lot, or garbage in the recycling can. So that seems to be, it's not so much as the incorrect, like one bottle or something like that. I mean, they tag for flagrant violation.
But now I thought I read that you can put meat bones and stuff in the green waste, which that would definitely attract rodents where we live out here on the coast. But, oh, wow.
That'll attract rodents no matter where you live.
Well, I know. I usually put it in the gray bin because, then you can put the bungee cord on it and all. But I don't know. I always wait till the morning of or very late at night to put it out because, anything meat-like stinks, and then that attracts the rodents or raccoons or dogs or whatever. Anyway, okay. I just wondered if so.
It sounds to me like we're going to have some good times having conversations with the community about the best way to do things and what works and what doesn't work. So I think we should anticipate a little bit of outreach going forward. Hey, there's this new thing. I know you're already thinking about it, but we as an organization probably ought to be giving a little thought to maybe we need to plan some outreach.
How to be a good citizen when trash is concerned.
I think, Allison, this is a good future agenda item, and in English and Spanish, and I think we do well noticing how heavily populated our discussion is tonight of the public. With the public, we're going to have to be sending these things out and creating posters. So sounds like fun, guys.
On recycled paper.
Oh, I have some old paper in my basement. We could just take one side of it and just.
I don't think old campaign posters. Never mind. Did we vote on this one? I don't remember.
No.
Okay. Did we close the public hearing though? I got that part right. Okay. Let's see. Let me get to the bottom of this staff report. Good grief, that's long. All right. Can we have a motion to adopt the ordinance?
I'll make the motion.
So I give that to Peter. Do we have a second?
I'll take the second.
That's Catherine. All right. Tracy, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Harvey?
Aye.
Director Lohman?
Yes.
Director Slater-Carter?
Yes.
Okay, by a vote of 5-0, the ordinance is enacted. And now we go to the last and least. Just kidding. If you thought our topic, the conversation so far was meaty, you haven't seen it yet. Item 4 for public hearing, review and possible action concerning amendments to the district's code relating to accessory dwelling units and the Subdivision Map Act.
Yeah,
I
thanks,
move that
Scott.
we extend the meeting through Saturday to cover this item.
The motion is not going to survive for lack of a second.
All right. Well, let's see what we can do tonight on this. So we are bringing some suggested changes to the district code to the board tonight. And I'm glad I have backup with me. Christine and Pippin are going to help me to address anything that I failed to mention here. And we already received some comments from the public. Greg sent us a note, so that's probably going to help us to go through also some of these changes and really demonstrate what it is that we're changing and in which direction this is going to go. So again, we've worked in pretty much in a larger group with our advisors. So we had Alex Handlers from Bartle Wells involved, Tanya Yurovsky and her staff from SRT, Pippin from Newt Engineering, Christine and myself spent quite a bit of time thinking through this. And what this really addresses is a number of things. It says right here, ADUs, additional dwelling units, and the subdivision map SB9 and SB10. So let's first look at the ADU changes. Within the recent years, really since 2017, the state has changed the law when it comes to ADUs pretty much every year a little more. And this now resulted in the county also adopting relevant ordinances that help us understand what this all means. Particularly, there are some exemptions for certain ADUs, and we're going to get into that, what that means. Other ADUs are not exempt from certain requirements. Then we have the Subdivision Map Act SB9 and 10. We already heard the board at the beginning of the meeting talk about this. So this now allows anyone to add additional dwelling units or essentially additional units, and also subdivide their property. And there is varying numbers of dwelling units that now can be put on single-family zoned homes, depending on if this is SB9 or 10, where the location is, etc. So we are really looking at clarifying our code to address some of these issues that we have been running into and that we're going to run into in the future. And I'm just going to get the easiest out of the way right away. It has been district policy to not allow main extensions through private property. So let's just mention this on the side. I hope we have agreement on that. The code would now clarify that the main frontage to serve a parcel be located entirely within the public right-of-way. We've run into quite a number of issues with mainline extensions that are located in private properties. We want to avoid that going forward. So when it comes to the ADU requirements, I'm just going to briefly try to describe what exempt units look like. And it is rather complicated. There's a great number of decision points that the county ordinance really points out, but I'm just going to simplify this. Essentially, if someone decides to convert existing space, if this is now a garage, boiler rooms, all kinds of existing spaces in a single family dwelling, that can now be converted into an ADU with only very minimal new space added. So if a property owner decides to convert existing space into an ADU, they're essentially exempt from paying connection fees to the district. Other fees can be charged. And I think I'm addressing already one of Greg's question here, but we can go and look at those in detail later. So the district can charge administrative fees, inspection fees, sewer service charges, additional sewer service charges for the additional unit. Pretty much everything except connection fees are exempt. Now, these are really the exempt units. When it comes to additional ADUs, there are also new requirements. There has to be a certain proportionality to connection fees that are charged for the new additional dwelling units. And that is really what we are trying to address here. And we're trying to address this on the water side as well as on the sewer side. To do that, there is a number of clarifications needed really first in the definition section of our code. So there's quite a bit of amendments when it comes to the definitions. And what we're also further clarifying now is how are additional dwelling units really connected to our system. And I'm also going to try to stay away from looking directly at the language. I'm going to try to explain how we interpret this. So how this would look like really is that the district has the authority, and we're looking a lot of times here really at decisions that our engineers are going to make. For example, to decide how is this property really connected? Is a separate side sewer, for example, required? So if there is a scenario where we can foresee that there is a potential subdivision for a detached unit and two separate property owners, we really want to be in the position where the individual units have separate side sewers. This may not make sense under certain circumstances if it's an attached unit. When it comes to the water side, where we are seeking also clarification is, for example, if a property is adding a lot of fixtures and certain flow requirements are exceeded, we would essentially allow for a larger meter to be put in for a single family unit. If now additional units are added, there are also new laws that require, have certain requirements when it comes to submetering. So that can be requested by a property owner, but it can also, under this code, be really asked for by the district. So what we would ask for when it comes to new units that are not exempt is that we would essentially require a separate meter to the new units, for example. Okay, so I think this is really the very basic look at what these what these code changes would do. So it would allow us to really process, have a very clear path and a very simplified code, but also a very simplified master fee schedule to address really the high amount of new ADUs that we're seeing, and also take care of tying loose ends when it comes to remodels, large remodels, addressing now the exempt units. I think the biggest change that we're looking to get to the master fee schedule, we are going to ask to amend the master fee schedule administratively. And this is really just a subtraction of some fees. And where we're trying to get to is a uniform fixture unit amount. And we have, for example, we have currently in some years ago, the district asked us, or we approached the district, there was some discussion with a customer, and there was a temporary reduction for remodels. We had the anticipation to see a lot of legalizations where essentially folks that went through some remodels that weren't permitted come forward. We really didn't see that high number of legalizations, by the way, but the district established a temporary situation and asked staff to really look into this matter and address at a later time how to handle this. And this is also essentially what we're trying to address right here. So we want to get to a single fixture unit fee. The fixture unit fee is based on what we have currently in the master fee schedule. So there is no new fees. There is only a simplification of how these fees are applied. So you may see some changes that really address how we're looking at this, and there is nothing that changes how we look at the fixture unit charge. A fixture unit charge is essentially based on a full connection fee divided by 25. And that will remain. So I hope I addressed most of the items, and I'm just going to briefly look also at Greg's comments and questions. I hope I did address most of them. I think I addressed most of them. So I'm gonna ask Christine and Pippin maybe to tell me if I forgot something, if there's a need to be more detailed before we hand it back to the board. But I'm certain that's going to be a lively discussion. Thanks.
Christine, did you have anything to add?
Have anything to add at this point? Thank you.
Okay, well, if that concludes the staff report, then let's open the public hearing. And let's begin with Carlisle, and followed by Catherine, followed by Greg.
I was trying to follow Clemens when he was talking, and he didn't give any examples. So I believe I understood that if it's a standalone ADU, there might be a higher fee because you may have to send out more pipe to supplement that unit. But if it's built into the house, there'll be a lower fee because it's just adding, maybe separating part of the house as a separate unit, but not adding a whole bunch of footprints or fixtures. Is that, or what's the exempt part? You didn't give examples, so it was hard for me to understand where you were going with it.
So we're really looking at three scenarios here. We're looking at exempt ADUs. An ADU is exempt under certain conditions. The main conditions are that the ADU is within existing space, so no new space can be added, or only a very little portion, I think up to 120 square feet. That is an exempt ADU. Okay, we cannot charge connection fees or capacity charges for exempt ADUs. The next category would be an attached ADU. So if you have an existing house or a house that is going to be newly constructed, and there's a main unit and a separate side unit, essentially two living units. There will be now clarification on how this is addressed, meaning we will issue 2 water meters, we will charge 2 connection fees for this, and we may see 2 separate side sewers even for I don't think for an attached unit that makes sense, but we leave that decision up to the engineer. There may be certain scenarios where this may make sense. The third scenario is really a detached scenario where you have a main unit and you have a detached extra house ultimately. And this can be now an existing structure and a new structure is added alongside, or it can be newly constructed as two separate units. And those also would be essentially, there would be a requirement for separate meters. And in this scenario, I can see that it would make way more sense to request also two separate side sources. We're also addressing multi-unit complexes, apartment complexes, etc. Every unit will be required to be metered separately. The sewer side, again, may look a little bit different, and there is some discretion that the engineer has. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. When you say side, are you SIDE or SITE?
SIDE, a lateral.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Pippin, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh, thank you, Scott. Clemens touched on most of it. I wanted to just add or clarify 2 points. He reiterate what he said. The existing structure, if you're trying to go for an exempt status, has to be an existing legalized structure. The district does not make these determinations. We always take the referral from the county. The county initiates the process and defines the categories. And then we work closely with them on proceeding with the categories and making sure we're understanding their how they working under the square footages and the guidelines that the county has determined is in compliance with the state law. So the district doesn't make these types of decisions. We're just clarifying the code with how the once those categories are established, how the district can provide the service. And as Clemens pointed out, cases where it could clearly be subdivided to a duplex or a condominium type scenario, we may look at that differently as opposed to, a granny unit being built in the back of a standard single family construction, particularly commenting on new constructions because they wouldn't be exempt.
Okay, thank you. Catherine.
I'll wait until board members are chatting.
Okay, let's go to Greg.
So I'll make two observations, which are really questions, and then I'll ask three major questions. There's a meter added to an extra unit. I assume that governs the sewer charge and is also charge a connection fee.
If there's an exempt unit, we will not be able to do that.
Not an exempt, an extra unit gets an extra meter, you charge a connection fee. Okay.
Yes.
But not necessarily a new sewer connection?
There may be a new sewer connection if it's a detached unit.
Okay. And that would be charged and would have its own lateral and it would get a connection fee?
Yes. And depending if this is a new construction or an existing structure, there's a slightly different approach.
I'm thinking of a detached garage which has no current sewer or water. The guy converts it into
Well, that is an existing structure.
But it has no sewer or water, so it gets a new meter and a new lateral? Okay, what do you say, Pippin?
Pippin says no.
No, it depends. Again, Greg, we don't define this. This depends on the square footages, and it's defined in the county. It's quite complicated to get into the details. If someone builds a 3,000 square foot garage into a 3,000 square foot apartment, that may not necessarily be exempt. There's quite strict guidelines in the county ordinance, and so we don't make those decisions. The county tells us, okay, this is an exempt unit. and then we follow the exempt standards.
But non-exempt would be charged a connection fee for a new sewer.
Right, and I want to clarify one thing. They still will be counted as 2 EDUs, and they still have in the sewer permit 2 connections. The engineer has the discretion to potentially allow 1 pipe or 1 shared pipe or a partial pipe or 2 separate pipes, depending on the topography of the property.
Could you repeat that, Edwin? You blocked off there, that last sentence, please.
Okay. If it's not exempt, it is charged a separate sewer connection. It may not be required to have a completely new lateral all the way to the street, or it may, depending on the circumstances.
So if the unit is, I'm sorry, Greg.
If the unit is not exempt.
Go ahead, Greg.
So let's say you have a new construction, it will get charged a new sewer service connection, but it may not necessarily, if there's an existing building, get an entirely new side sewer all the way to the main. The requirement for the requirement for the pipe to connect completely separately may or may not be required depending on the particular layout of the property. For example, an apartment building, let's take an apartment building with 10 units, we're not going to require 10 laterals, but you still have 10 living units.
And 10 water meters.
So if you had like a house with a good sized backyard and someone purchases a prefabricated ADU, has it lifted by crane into the backyard, that might be a case where it would get new meters, but it might tie into the house lateral because there's really not a good way to get a separate lateral all the way to the frontage. Something like that, maybe?
Exactly. And it wouldn't necessarily have its own individual frontage anyway, because it's, as you say, behind the existing unit. So that would be possibly a unit that couldn't be subdivided because it wouldn't have a frontage.
My understanding is that the owner is responsible forever for the care and feeding of the lateral. So there's no impact on the district as I can see. Okay. But the water meter, as I understand it, is used as a basis for the sewer charges. So if that's correct, and somebody does not get a new meter for their ADU, then their water consumption is going to go up. So I understand their sewer is going to go up. My question is that true? And is the sewer charge going to be tiered the same way the water usage is charged? So that somebody would be moving up in CCFs with an ADU added to their property, if they were on the same meter, would their sewer charge go up strictly linearly, or would there be a tiering that increases the rate at which they're also charged for sewer?
We're not changing any charges here, Greg. There is no changes to any type of how we essentially look at sewer service charges. If you have a property,
that answers it.
Okay, good.
That answers it. All right. So from prior conversations here, my concern is always the burden of growth on existing ratepayers, and I don't want existing ratepayers to be subsidizing new joiners. So there are 3, I guess, questions. One is there a financial impact analysis that shows the impact on the district of this change in rates and fees? Secondly, what are other districts doing about this, and how does what they're doing compare to what we're doing? And then the final thing is, if we learn something, like if we haven't done a financial impact analysis, but we do one and we see something we don't like, can this be amended based on either learning something from other districts or, practice when we become more aware of the issues that arise?
So I'm going to try to answer and see if I can remember all the questions. But so first again, there is no change to any rates. There is no change to any charges. And therefore, there is no requirement for a financial analysis. What was your second question?
What are other districts doing, and how does what we're doing compare to what is being done elsewhere?
So I'm gonna ask Pippin to jump in here in a second, but essentially other districts are doing very similar things that we're doing. However, I'm gonna point out that we are our independent government, and this board can make its own decisions.
If I could just make a real quick comment on that. Our next special district chapter meeting is going to be in February. I'm going to mandate that this be the major discussion item. So I will ask, and we will participate in a couple-hour discussion. What's everybody doing about this? So all the special districts that are, well, mosquitoes don't care, hospitals don't care, but anybody related to water and sewer, I'll be asking all of them, here's what we're doing. What are you guys doing? So we'll get feedback from every other organization in the county. That's going to be the first week in February, probably. So
okay, and,
I think
so
so.
I appreciate you are our own, little fiefdom, and that we can do what we want. I just want to be sure that we can change our minds when we learn something.
That was your third question, and yes, we can do that. It just
that was my third question.
It requires a public hearing that is properly noticed to do so. So
Pippin?
This can be amended.
So I think, to be fair to Greg's question, there is some upfront fiscal impact that all special districts with sewer and water agencies are going to feel here, and that's with these potential exempt units. We don't have any information at this point, Greg, on how you'd possibly provide a reasonable financial impact review, because there's no data to suggest how many people are going to continue to do this. The law has some rules about, the house has to be built before a certain date. So, it has to be an older home. All districts are going to serving sewer and water are going to have a financial burden for exempt units. There's no way around that. But how many people in an individual community choose to build exempt units? That is like reading tea leaves. It's not really possible to predict. So, I don't know how best to answer that. So all the districts we work with, and if you probably read in the newspaper, this is a tough topic that's affecting water districts all around the state. This is a potential from the political side to solve certain problems, but from a water resource management side, it's kind of a nightmare for planning because it's not clear how you can bolster your infrastructure to handle potential additional domestic load and fire protection. So, I think it's not unique just to this district. This is a statewide issue. We are seeing some legalizations currently in Montara, but we're also seeing non-exempt units being built. So I think we'll have to just review in the future, come back and give an update of, how it's gone over the last 6 months. We can't change our minds in the sense the district, as Clement says, isn't making any new fees, but we can't change our minds on the exempt ones. That's a state law. So we're stuck with that right now until the law's changed.
Fair. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Do we have any other public testimony? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So
I'll
moved.
make a motion.
Second.
Okay, so Peter and then Rick for the motion in the second. Tracy, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Harvey?
Aye.
Loman?
Yes.
Director Slater Carter?
Of course, yes.
Okay, by a vote of 5-0, the hearing is closed. Let's go to the board discussion.
Can I ask a question? Clemens or Pippin, so on an exempt unit, if the person uses the garage in an exempt unit and it qualifies to build a new sink and a new toilet, there are no extra fees or connection fees. A new maybe let's say a new kitchen with a water outlet and a toilet. There are no, correct?
You're breaking up, Jim.
The last sentence.
Let me ask again. If an exempt unit with you're developing the garage with a toilet and a kitchen sink, and it qualifies to be exempt, that there are no connection fees, correct?
So if it qualifies, and I think Pippin tried to point that out, right? The county is really, the county ordinance is really the guiding document here. And the county is the decision maker in what is exempt and what is not exempt. If the unit is exempt, then we cannot charge connection or capacity fees. We can't charge other applicable fees.
Okay. Thank you.
Catherine, you had your hand up.
Thank you. A couple things I kept adding to the list. First, I would like to not take a vote tonight, but continue this until our next meeting. I think this is hugely complex and there's a lot of questions. And I want to thank staff and consultants for all of the hard work you have done. This is just an amazing thing. We struggled with this about 20 years ago with second units. And one of the problems was people were adding second units and a second unit and then separate second unit and then subdividing the lot and selling it off. So that got dealt with in our ordinance. One of the things that I think is very important is that there be recorded easements on any lines crossing things that are, even if it's not subdividable. I have a piece of property in town that I bought as a rental, and we were taking a tree out, and all of a sudden the neighbor uphill was pissed off because they didn't have any water. Turned out they had a water line running across our property and there was no recorded easement. Turned out the recorded easement was on the next door neighbor's property, but the recorded easement hadn't been recorded with a good property description. So we need to make sure that these kinds of things are covered for the subdivision and future sales of properties, both for sewer and water. I think we need to make sure that we have a line that all of this stuff refers, because the county doesn't care, to our domestic sewer and domestic water service area. Because there are, I was just checking on some things out in the rural area, and I was told by someone, oh no, you can build on this lot. And I said, but there's no sewer. And they said, oh, really?
Oops.
Well, you can attach it to your septic system and you can just get a water line if you want. And then you could, I said, no. So we have to make sure that we're very clear on what fits within our ordinance and state requirements on us as well. And so that, and I think one of the things that I heard mentioned sort of as a by the by in various comments was whether this was going to be subdivided or not. And I know driving around Redwood City, for instance, you see a whole lot of flag lots where there's a driveway wide connection to the main street, and then there's a house that was built in somebody else's big backyard. And again, these are things that we may need to find out how that's going to work with the county. We don't have big backyards here, but I could see them allowing flag lots as well, particularly with SB 10, which, to be real honest, allows things down to about a development on lots as small as about 1,300 square feet for a lot. So we need to be protective of our infrastructure and the ability for people to take care of their infrastructure. We don't want another instance where a sewer line went down a vacant street right of way and there were problems there too. And so that's pretty much what I'm thinking at this point. But I would like to be able to have this discussion and then rehash it again, just so some of us can think about this more. And Greg, the state doesn't care about taxing its residents. That's why they're leaving.
So if I can briefly address some of what Catherine just brought up. These are exactly the thoughts that we had when this was drafted. That is why you're, for example, seeing that mainline frontage, the public right-of-way is required. You see the flexibility that we're trying to give our water and sewer engineers to make these decisions, because knowing our area, knowing our district, we run every day in scenarios that we never thought we would see before. And that is why we ask for this flexibility, so that we can really sit down with every application that is coming and think exactly through, how could this look in the future, and make a determination on how this property can or cannot be connected to the district. When it comes to hearing this item again at the next meeting, that will not be possible because this is a public hearing. It needs to be noticed properly. I want to be clear that staff is recommending to adopt the orderly changes tonight. If there are amendments that need to be made throughout the next months or next year, I would recommend that path. I prefer that path.
Okay.
I see a comment from Pippin real quick.
Yeah, let Pippin talk.
Okay, so those are excellent points, Catherine. I think that I'm going to take a moment and thank Christine, who spent many, many hours going through this. And we should thank the work that Dave Schricker had done in the past, because many of these items that you're pointing out are actually in the code already. And really what Christine spent most of her time clarifying the language to match the state law, because the district terminology didn't match the state terminology for accessory dwelling units versus, second units, and a lot of these kind of names weren't consistent. So everything in the language now matches the state law language. But to your point, that was a big issue we talked about with the subdivision. That is a huge concern, and that property frontage requirement will reduce the risk of landlocked parcels and easements being across other people's property. But in addition, there is already language in the code, which I don't think Christine amended, or maybe only amended slightly, that gives the district the, what's the wording, Christine, the authority to take these individual applications and define specific agreements to handle special cases for particular properties. For example, one abstract one I'm thinking of, it's, someone's asked the district in the past about applying for, developing a difficult to develop lot. And, we're writing a specific agreement that would require him to, that applicant to utilize the public right of way such it didn't go across other people's property, those type of things. So I think there's a lot already in there. And add, please, Christine, if you need to, but I think that a lot of that's there, and
it is.
And mostly what's happening here is a simplification and really an updating from the stopgap that the district had put in place 5 years ago to try to accomplish many of these same things.
No, absolutely right.
I'm sorry, Catherine, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I thought you were.
You thought I was Sid.
Oh, well, I'm going to go to Rick first.
These are quick comments. I understand that there will be some unknowns in this, and I think Pippin has very well addressed that there's going to, no matter what we do tonight or in the next months, there are going to be some stuff we're going to have to look at and analyze individual cases. I think the exemption homes, can't do anything about them. Totally separate units, they'll have to hook up if they can. Those are really clear. The gray area, no matter what we do tonight, Pippin and his group and everybody else are going to have to analyze that and make individual proposals. So I think the way this is framed is pretty good. We can't possibly define every possible scenario that can exist here or ever. And Pippin does a great job at doing that. And they will look at the exceptions and promote the best possible solution, whatever that is. So I like both of the arguments they've made, and I will be in favor of this ordinance. And then Pippin dealing, the engineering people will have to say, oh, it has to go into one pipe, it's two pipes. No, you can't do that. Yes, you can do this. That's going to be an exception basis, and we're just going to have to deal with that. So
let's get through the public testimony.
Oh,
and
I thought we were on board. I'm sorry.
No, that's sorry. It's a little long, but let's go to Carlisle.
This is a quick clarification. I think I understood Clemens to say that there's going to be mandatory subdivisions if you have like a detached unit. Is that, or it's not a subdivision as far as a APN number goes?
No, they're not mandatory, but there are options for subdivision.
Some people may try that.
Well, I just wondered because I noticed my neighbor on Precita, he has a house on Precita, his doorway faces Precita, but his garage faces San Ramon, and he put an ADU up in the rafters of the garage for his daughter, and it has a separate address and everything. So I don't know if that was his choice or if the county made him do it. That's why I was asking. Thanks. I also once had a vacant lot for sale over on Jordan Street, and they told me that they'd had to get the sewer line to run down the neighbor's easement to get it up to that street where there was no sewer. So I see what you're talking about. It gets crazy out there in the backwoods. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Do we have any other public comment, public testimony? Christine?
Thanks, President Boyd. Didn't we close public testimony already? Aren't we on discussion? I just wanted to make sure.
I apologize if I lost track of that.
That's okay.
Four hearings in one night. I haven't been keeping a scorecard.
Sorry.
Tracy, did we close the public hearing? Does anyone know for sure?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did, but we like to be transparent and include everybody. So,
no problem with that.
Okay, absolutely. I just want to make sure that I took the. So, Rick, I'm sorry.
I hate to be chastised, and I have a good lawyer, so that's
well. I have the same lawyer, so there. So Rick, I kind of cut you short there on you indicating where you're going.
I'm in favor, and I'll make the motion to accept this ordinance, knowing that there's going to be some exceptions that are going to have to be analyzed by Pippin and his group and everybody, because nothing will be it's either A or B. There's going to be so many exceptions, assuming lots of people want to do this, which may not even occur. So I don't want to, assume that we're going to have 5,000 new applications. But I think this is a good start. And we will deal with the exceptions when they come up, because that's what we have to do no matter what.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so let me restate what we've got here. In this one, I'm going to read. So we have had a public hearing. We've considered the relevant testimony. We've closed the public hearing, and we now have a motion to adopt the ordinance next in order, an ordinance amending. I'm just going to read this because somebody had to type it. An ordinance amending sections 3-1.100, 3-5.400, 3.9, and so forth as written into the agenda. That's the motion before the board.
That's exactly what I said, yes.
And do we have further discussion? I have one comment, but Jim or Peter, any further questions or comments?
No.
I do have, I somehow managed to catch one typo. So on the second page of the ordinance as presented in the packet, in paragraph Y, on the second line, the first word is additional and should be addition without the AL. So
I knew that.
I'm not trying to show off, but I couldn't help but notice the typo. And honestly,
Clemens, did you catch the typo I sent you?
Was it in your email?
I caught it.
Yes.
Good.
I
Thanks.
caught it.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
And I'll get this one too. Thanks.
And Catherine contributed tonight as well, Christine. I'll check. Tomorrow on that.
I appreciate, I'll add my comments now. I appreciate the complexity and the enormous amount of work that has gone into something like this. Frankly, the state and the county are, it's their moves and machinations that puts us in a position where we need to respond. And I want to commend all the staff that worked on this for doing the right thing, which is up front, trying to get our house in order with respect to the various external regulations, doing the harmonizing of the language. We've all been here for a variety of discussions with members of the community who, because of the nature of the language, find themselves in a situation that they've had to bring it to us. I really appreciate, and we may never know how many situations like that we've avoided by trying to get all this harmonized. But I want to say up front, I know that it will spare us some trouble. We'll have difficulties anyway, because we're dealing with homes and families and all different kinds of people.
And money.
And money. And, frankly, it's great. We're here to try to do the best we can. And, as Rick said, yeah, we're going to learn a thing or two, and we're going to have to come back and revise it. So I would say look forward to a public hearing before too terribly long as we learn. But I really appreciate getting this done. It's timely. I share with Catherine the concern about the enormity of the change. And I share with Rick the desire, let's take this first step, and then let's not assume we're done.
Hear, hear.
So we have a motion and a second. Tracy, could we have a roll call, please?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Harvey?
Aye.
Director Lohman?
Yes.
Director Slater Carter?
Yes.
Okay, by a motion by a vote of 5-0, the motion carries. The ordinance is enacted. Okay, now I have to go find.
Now we have the
Document that
consent agenda.
I had to go find the agenda. All right, so
It's not Saturday yet.
does any member of the board wish to pull any items from the consent agenda for further consideration? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so Catherine and Rick, Tracy, could we have a roll call, please?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Harvey?
Aye.
Lohman?
Yes.
Director Slater Carter.
Yes.
Okay, by by a vote of 5-0, the consent agenda is passed and adopted. Let's go to new business item 1. We have no old business. New business 1, review and possible action concerning remote meetings during emergency conditions under Government Code Section 54953 of the Brown Act.
Thank you. So this is the monthly resolution that we have to adopt to allow ourselves to hold this and the following meeting via teleconference. And it's the same one that we looked at last month. I guess by next month, we change Delta to Omicron and submit it again. And
We're going to run out of Greek letters here pretty soon.
Recommendations to adopt a resolution authorizing remote teleconference meetings of the Board of Directors of MWSD, Section 54953 of the Government Code of the Brown Act during existence of state of emergency conditions related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Tracy, you got a lot of work tonight. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Harvey,
Aye.
Director Loman,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter.
Yes.
Do we have to record that as 3 ayes and 2 yeses, or are we okay with that?
We're going to record that as the motion carries by unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to take a moment since this is a community meeting. I remember the first time that I asked Tracy to do a roll call vote, and the look in her eyes. She realized she might have to say something in a board meeting. I don't know exactly what she was thinking, but you appear to be a little more comfortable with it today than you were that first time. So
After 400 practices.
And thanks to COVID and these remote meetings, you get a lot more of this. So I don't get to say very often how much we appreciate your help, but we need the help. So thank you.
And the cookies.
Thank you.
All right. New business 2, review and possible action concerning district recycled paper procurement policy to deal with all these new big, long state mandates.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Scott. So from now on, it's only recycled paper, at least with 30% recycled content. And we have to keep records and submit records, mainly invoices and so on, for the procurement of paper. And we have to make sure that the vendors supply us with the correct stuff. So this is all in context of this Senate Bill 1383 and the ordinance that we adopted. This is one of the requirements that we're following here. So the recommendation is to adopt resolution of the Montara Water and Sanitary District adopting recycled content paper purchase policy. We have a policy attached and the resolution.
I see Rick, and I see.
Is it possible that we could include a requirement on the California legislature to limit all of these laws to like 5 pages?
Printed double-sided.
Yes.
Let's go to Carlisle.
That
I'm
may
sorry.
be.
I think my hand was up accidentally.
Well, it's
Down now.
okay. Clemens, I do have one question. Is when we file with the state, do we have to file in triplicate? All right. Can I have a motion? Can I have a motion, please?
So
if we do it double-sided, it's only 1.5 pages to file it triplicate.
Yeah.
I think we should just print it 3 up, where you put 3 pages on and then double-sided.
Really small font.
6 pages on 1 piece of paper.
I so move.
Okay, okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution of the Montara Water and Sanitary District adopting recycled content paper purchase policy. Tracy, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Harvey?
Aye.
Loman?
Yes.
Director Slater Carter?
Aye.
Okay,
Now it's 4-1, fine.
What?
It's 4-1 ayes versus yeses, so that's fine.
I see. By a vote of 5-0 affirmative votes, the motion carries. All right.
I will not change.
No, you won't. Item 3, review and possible action concerning memorandum of understanding with County of San Mateo for edible food recovery.
All right, thanks. So we had actually Jack Johnson here and Chris Porter at the last meeting, and kudos to Chris for still being with us tonight to take a closer look at what this actually means here. This is, again, in relationship to SB 1383. We have to put an edible food recovery program in place. It doesn't really affect us too much. There is certain conditions for large vendors, so supermarkets. We don't really have a supermarket. And then I think it affects businesses that serve 2,000 or more meals, as far as I understand. So I think we have a discussion about potentially Fairlawn Youth School being included in this. This now is, I think, the biggest paper tiger of the whole SB 1383. The county stepped forward and offered to take this on for all agency in San Mateo County. And yes, we applaud this.
Yes.
Because I think we rather sign this MOU than deal with this ourselves. So I'm going to see if Chris has something to add, but the staff recommendation is to adopt the resolution of MWSD approving and authorizing an edible food recovery memorandum of understanding with the County of San Mateo. And briefly also, thank you for Christine for reviewing all this, for preparing all this. For most of the items tonight, she definitely did the heavy lifting on this. So Chris, is there anything else that you want to say about the county MOU?
Please agree. This is not something we want to take on. It's very complicated.
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any additional public comment or board discussion? Seeing none, thank you for, I have a comment. Kudos to the county for doing something helpful for the coast side. I had to stop and ask Clemens. I had to ask Clemens earlier this week, help me understand this. This part of the county is apparently really on top of their game and really being helpful. And if they can consolidate this and especially consolidating the paperwork and organizing it so there's not a lot of different ways that this is all being done, that's a good thing. That's a good thing for government to be doing, and happy to have their help. Okay, did we get the motion in the second yet?
No, I really dislike the word consolidate, so we could fix something else. That would be great. Just saying.
Working together. Okay. Tracy, can we have a roll call vote?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Harvey?
Aye.
Director Lohman?
Yes.
Director Slater Carter?
We have four affirmatives and one
mute.
I'm sorry, that would be yay, as in yes.
Yay.
Okay, so let there be 4 yeses and 1 yay for a total of 5 in the affirmative. The motion carries.
3 yeses, 3 ayes, 1 yes, and 1 a.
Yay.
Yay. Moving on.
We are looking real hard at trying to show some kind of independent thinking, aren't we, guys?
You know, we don't usually have a problem finding a way to have different points of view. Item 4, review and possible action concerning Second Amendment. to solid waste franchise agreement with Ecology of the Coast.
Is that the right to bear arms?
This may be the first time we've taken up the Second Amendment at a board meeting I've attended, but
Okay, so yeah, second time we're amending the franchise agreement with Ecology of the Coast. Of course, in context of SB 1383, we have to adjust it to add the rates and also change the language in accordance with the requirements for SB 1383. Again, Christine reviewed, looked at this, communicated with the Ecology Council on this. So thanks again for all the heavy lifting on this one. Staff recommendation is to adopt the resolution approving and authorizing the execution of the Second Amendment to franchise agreement for solid waste and recycling services.
do I see any public comment? Any board discussion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, with our thanks to staff and Recology, Tracy, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Thanks to Chris for hanging in through all of this. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Loman,
Always yes.
Director Slater Carter.
Just to be different, yay.
I've heard that one before. By 5-0, the motion carries. The resolution is adopted. And now let's go to reports. Sewer Authority.
Bye, Chris. Bye-bye.
Aye.
Bye, Chris.
Run, Chris. Run for your life.
Thank you so much, Chris, for everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine, for really working hard on this with me and with our council. Thank you.
Your council is great, Bryce and Alexis, I think. Anyway,
Yes.
It was really a pleasure
Thank
to
you.
work with them. And you too, Chris, on a weekend. You kept
too.
responding to
Bye-bye.
me. Bye.
Happy holidays.
Same to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. All right. As we go into the SAM report, let me just encourage us all to get on through it. It's been a long meeting and we have more to do in closed session.
Yeah, and Greg's not even here. They're really, we keep working on the same stuff. I'm looking at the, we had an update on the non-domestic waste program. There's an attachment. We had a very good safety program inspection. A lot of things that were unsafe last year have been fixed this year. And there was a finance committee meeting today, and we are working on a CIP report. I've forgotten how frequently it will be, but essentially it will list CIP projects and when they were approved and when they were funded and kind of track what happened to them. But we can do that with the new accounting system of Tyler without taking a whole lot of accountant time and effort. And we're not going to go back and try and sort through all the mishmash. The other thing is that we were talking about a new policy, which was brought up by the fact that, again, when the Tyler was implemented, there were a lot of problems in implementation, and it led to years of work for all the member agencies and the SAM staff. And so they have moved the discrepancy between GCSD and SAM over into a sort of a new category, and it's no longer going to be a problem, and we now have a policy to deal with accounting mistakes.
I have some quick additions. The non-domestic source, whatever it is called, program. We understood from the managers meeting that there was a discussion to occur. The agenda item was a draft plan. Half Moon Bay presented it as this is our way or the highway. We will accept no discussion, no changes. This is the program that we're going to adopt. At the time, I voted yes because I wanted to get the program running. We'll be discussing that in closed session, but this was non-discussed items. Half Moon Bay just said, this is what we're going to do. So typical of what we've seen in SAM. And we'll talk more about that later.
Okay. Anything further on that? Not really going to try too hard. Midcoast Community Council meeting.
No report. I haven't been following it.
Okay. CSTA report.
The next meeting is going to be in February, and we're going to hopefully discuss SB 9 and 10 and see what other districts are doing to see if they're in agreement with us.
Okay. LAFCO report.
I'm not sure when I announced at which meetings, but our executive director, Martha Poyatos, is retiring at the end of the year. We have a letter prepared thanking her for her help and information to the COSIDE and our district in specific. Hopefully everybody can get in and sign it. I think it's appropriate for all of us to sign after 28 years of service.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for getting that set up, everybody. Attorney's report.
No report.
Director's reports. Anyone?
Nothing else.
General manager's report.
I want to mention that we do have a new newsletter that is available online and also in the mail and is being sent out already.
Okay, great. Well, with that, I'd like to thank the public for, well, we do have anything before we go, anything for future agendas? We have a couple of items listed on the agenda. Anything else?
Something that I have asked for at SAM, and I don't know if you're interested in having it presented here by Keishan, is that Director Clark from GCSD has made some statements about the accounting at SAM that I am concerned have left the public uncertain of whether to trust the SAM accounting or not. And I would, if the rest of the board agrees, I would love to have Keishan and or George come into our meeting and explain what's going on with that. I think it's important for transparency that everyone understand what's going on with the SAM books. A lot of progress has been made recently in the last 2 years.
I think Peter Medina should participate in that meeting.
Perfect.
Let's get that on the agenda. That's good. That kind of clarification is usually very helpful.
It's good.
Okay. So with that, we'd like to thank the members of the public for joining us and participating. It's been a very interactive meeting. We are going to go into closed session after taking a brief break. We're going to have, let's see, what do we have? We've got existing litigation, so conference with legal counsel on Half Moon Bay choosing to sue all of its neighbors. Anticipated litigation, one case, anticipated litigation, another possible case. And then if we take any action, we will report that out after we come out of closed session. So let's take a little longer break. Let's start at 5 after the top of the hour.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, everyone.